All right, we're going to take two. This, it's going to be really good when it just doesn't work on the first try. So Haley's going to be jumping on with me in just a minute. I announced earlier, I just deleted the last live, but the winner of our last giveaway was Lila Sir. And so I have your information and I'll be getting that shipped out to you. But I'm super excited about the conversation that we're going to have tonight. I know most of you guys are probably going to be watching the replay. Okay, here we go. Oh, I'm like, okay, everybody say a little prayer that this works. So, because this is a topic that I think that a lot of people are going to benefit from, just knowing the wisdom and having the strategies, because I know that this topic around dieting and food and your relationship with food and your relationship with your body, it's a newer conversation that, hasn't been happening for a long time. I know that I was raised, in a home where it was like always a diet, right? And it's not what's taught, it's what's caught. So I'm so excited to have Haley on because I had no idea kind of how we got here and how this is actually like the first conversation that you and I have ever had. But Haley, I was introducing you. Haley was an incredible athlete in high school and in college. That's how I always knew of you. And I just remember like watching you in high school, and you were always just like so ripped and so like just had everybody's dream body. And I just remember just admiring that about you. And then I started, seeing more of your stuff that you've been sharing on social media within the last few months. And I was like, okay, you talk all about intuitive eating, mindfulness, overcoming this bad relationship with food and your body. And I had never seen you share your story about this until the other day, but I knew you had one because you don't share that stuff without having a story. And so I'm going to have you kind of share how you arrived here and your journey on this topic. But I struggled with the same thing. So you arrived, after a big life shift, having surgery, getting injured. For me, it was because of what I watched growing up, but I struggled with the same thing, binge eating, having terrible regret afterwards, and then just this whole continuous cycle, like binge eating to the point of getting sick.
Yeah.
So I know like this is a newer topic. This is something that people are really just starting to talk about. Like we were raised in diet culture. And so I'm actually excited to hear more about your story and your journey and how you got here. Because I think there's so many people who are going to resonate. And the last thing that I want to say that's significant is, Haley, if you guys can all go look at her on social media after this, her content is great. So much great value. But you look like a statue, and like you always have, like you've always just been so, built, like you have a lot of people's dream body. But what's significant is it doesn't matter if you have somebody's dream body or if you are 50 pounds overweight. You could be more tormented mentally around food in your body than somebody who actually, has 50 pounds that they need to lose. So that's going to be my segue. I'm going to turn it over to you. And I would, just kind of fill us in on your story, your struggles, and how you got here.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to think about diet culture because when it's almost like a situation where we live in a society where if you live in a larger body, that's not acceptable. And if you live in a smaller body, that is what's acceptable. And so, right, I've grown up with this privilege, and I always like to start with that of I am in a smaller body. And that comes with it the privilege of quote unquote societal acceptance. And when you think about being accepted, you never want to be at a place where you don't feel accepted, which kind of like drives this wedge of like, oh no, how could like I could never be in that spot. What, like, that's my self-confidence, that's my self-worth, is like the way that my body looks. And yeah, you're kind of like, you're right in the sense of like I'm so passionate about health at every size because no matter what body you live in currently, you could not be at a place of, right, like physical, emotional, mental pleasantness. You could be unpleasant no matter what body you're living in. And I think I started dieting in high school, and I remember specifically it being around powerlifting. I had three girls who were in my weight class, and we kind of had all decided, okay, if we all want to place, one of us has got to cut to a lower weight class. And so in my mind, I was like, yeah, like I'm gonna be the strongest one, like me. I'll do that. And I remember start getting my fitness pal and starting to like eat whatever calories it told me to eat. And that was kind of my start of like whenever I went into that powerlifting meet, I had lost so much strength. And I think I still placed, but I was like, man, I just remember feeling so physically weak. And that was like my first recognition of like, was that worth it? You lost all your strength because you felt like you needed to cut weight. And it was the lowest weight that I have ever been, kind of like in high school. But then that number like stayed in my head. And that number kind of sticks with you when you think about, right, how many people look back and be like, oh, all right, that body, like I want that body back, right? But it's a like high school body, right? No
Right.
one ever stays that size, but that sticks with you. And then when I got to college, I had never been in a place of being removed from sports. That was my life. That was my like everything to me. That was who Haley was. And whenever I had to get surgery my freshman year, I had to redshirt. They told me it's going to be 9 to 12 months before you're able to do anything. And it was like, whoa, what? How am I supposed to keep my body that I have because that's my self worth? And I started turning to food because I didn't have coping mechanisms in place to, right? What happens when your movement's removed from your life? How do you cope? That was my coping mechanism for relieving stress and, helping me focus because I got my energy out and, just helping me feel pleasantly well. And I didn't have anything else in place. I didn't know that I could go on a walk to make me feel that way. I didn't know that I could read a book. I didn't know that I could, like hang out with friends to help me like have that other avenue. And so that led me to coping with food, which ended up leading to an eating disorder because Haley's now eating all this food. Oh no, she's going to gain weight. We can't let that happen, which led to me having an eating disorder. And that was definitely my breaking point in the sense of like, you're so mentally and emotionally unwell right now. Food has such a hold on you right now that it's your 24/7. You can't go to your grandma's house without thinking about consuming all of this food. You feel like you have no control. You can't go to social events or right you're going to binge on those things. No one sees it because you're doing it behind closed doors. Everyone thinks you because you look physically a certain way that's right. You must be healthy because weight is seen as that's what health is. And so I went later on after college, I did do a bodybuilding show, which I didn't have that eating disorder anymore, but that still was like driving the wedge of counting macros and working towards having a smaller body. And that was definitely like my final straw because I remember my parents inviting me to come to something at the lake, and I ended up saying no because I can't have the food that you guys are going to have. And that breaking point for me was like, you're giving up social things like with your family, your friends because of food. And I was like, that was my breaking point because I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to wake up when I'm 90 years old and be like, man, I'm so glad that I didn't spend time with my family and friends because of food. And
Right.
so, yeah, like that was kind of my point where I was like, I hit diet bottom is what I like to call it in the sense of like, we've probably all been at that point of like, I can't do this anymore. Like, no one wakes up and is like, man, I can't wait to go on another diet. I can't wait
Right.
to restrict myself from food. So that was my point where I said, there has to be like another way for me to be able to let go of those things. And I kind of just went from there.
Well, I was okay, so that's so amazing. And it's just so cool that we're having this conversation because, like you just said, you would never know by looking at you that you had this mental torment 24/7. So it's like, I feel like this is really like a silent epidemic that a lot of people are being controlled by. I was definitely one of them. And for me, I dieted. And honestly, I don't know if I would have stopped if I didn't get pregnant, because when I
Mm-hmm.
got pregnant, I started looking at food differently. I didn't look at food as calories and carbs. I started looking at food as the ingredients and the nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I love that I hear you talk about a lot, so we can kind of get into like some strategies that people can take with them after tonight, around food, the relationship with food, is this idea of mindfulness. So let's kind of segue into that, and like, what even is mindfulness? Like, what is food freedom?
Yeah, I think so. With intuitive eating, one of the big umbrellas of that is helping you reconnect with your body. So we're all born intuitive eaters, right? When we think of an infant, they simply are going to let you know when they're hungry, and they're going to let you know when they're done. And right, depending on how old they are, they're probably going to let you know what they want and what they don't want. There's no emotional thought processes going on in the sense of, I need to look a certain way, or I need to not have this because it's quote unquote bad. It's simple, right? They're listening to what their body is telling them. And so we're all born that way, but along that journey, we lose that because diet culture starts to creep in. And so mindfulness and being able to reconnect with your body can do three pretty cool things. And it's able to tell you when you're hungry, when you're full, and what it wants to eat. And so when we think about that, some of where along the way we may have lost that ability, right? If someone may feel like they don't get hunger signals consistently, or
Right.
all they get is very strong ones, like I get a lightheadedness or fatigue, then we may have kind of lost some trust with the body to be able to send you hunger signals consistently. But that's really what mindfulness is about, in the sense of understanding what your body is telling you and being able to regain that trust that your body isn't wrong when it tells you those things. We just may have barriers that are keeping you from being able to listen to those things.
Do you feel like patterns even just plays a role in this? Is just like a pattern that people get stuck in with this?
Yeah, so there's actually a big cycle that when I work with people on making peace with food, in the sense of having unconditional permission to have all foods. A lot of times there's a misconception that that means I have to eat all foods all the time, and that's not what intuitive eating is. It's helping us make decisions that make us feel physically, emotionally, and mentally pleasant. But when we think about having unconditional permission to have all foods, it means knowing that I'm making those decisions for physical reasons rather than emotional. So for example, let's say that I have permission to eat all foods whenever I want. Maybe I go into lunch and I eat and I'm full. And then maybe someone brings me a dessert afterwards, or someone's like, Haley, you need to go eat more. There's more food left over there, right? I know I have permission to do that, but is that going to be a decision that's going to make me feel physically pleasant in that moment? Maybe not. When I know that that food's not going anywhere, though, I'm not restricting it, then I know, let's say snack time rolls around, I may go grab one of those foods because my hunger signal is back. In that moment, it would make me feel physically pleasant. So that cycle that I see a lot of times is, I don't allow unconditional permission to have all foods. I have rules around foods. And so when I do allow myself to have those things, um, typically overeat them because I don't allow myself to have them. There's always a fear that it's going to go away again. So I overeat them because it's an all or nothing situation. And then I feel guilty because I did that. And then I tell myself kind of some false evidence of, well, that's why I have to have rules because I overeat when I have them. But can we be curious about the fact that am I overeating them because I have the rules around them, because I restrict myself from them? So I love to talk to people about that because it's like, oh, well, I thought I needed the rule because I overate them. With it's all in good intention, but that's a lot of the times it's happening because you have the rule that's causing you to do that. So I work with people on breaking that cycle. When that food isn't going anywhere, when I know it's not my last opportunity to eat it, it doesn't seem as worth it to make yourself feel physically unpleasant in that moment because you could always have it later that evening, tomorrow, right? If you still wanted it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. And that's actually so like unconsciously I was not aware that that's what I was doing, but I was. Okay, so me at my heaviest, I mean I did have weight to lose whenever I was at my heaviest, so I understand the struggle of like physically looking in the mirror and just like, I mean, you could be any size, but you know, that was the driving force for me. But
Mm-hmm.
whenever I got pregnant, I took the restrictions off because I guess whatever. And then I found that I wasn't binging anymore because I was going to
Yeah.
have it. Like I unconsciously actually did that, like went through that process.
Yeah, so those foods actually become when you do allow yourself to have unconditional permission, and the true key there is like actually believing that you have unconditional permission. So sometimes I talk to people and they're like, "Haley, I've tried to give myself unconditional permission. I still overeat them." We're actually not giving ourselves full permission. It's I might be telling myself I can have it, but in the back of my head, I'm still thinking this is so bad for me. I shouldn't be doing this. I don't need this. I need to work this
I
off
can't eat
after.
this
And
later. Like I have to eat it now.
uh-huh. So you've partly given yourself permission, but you still kind of like in the back of your head aren't. And so we have to truly believe that we are allowed to have it, we're allowed to enjoy it. And when that happens, those foods become more normal and then become more ordinary. So when we think about like I've never personally known someone to overeat chicken and vegetables
Right.
because we as like the diet culture has told you that you can have those foods whenever you want. They're not going anywhere. They're normal because you have them whenever you want them. Whenever you don't allow those things whenever you want them, they aren't normal. They aren't ordinary. So I have so many people who are like, Haley, oh my gosh, I allow myself to buy something, I keep it in the freezer and I know I can have it whenever I want. So it's just kind of like it's normal like all my other foods. So it doesn't have
Wow.
that pull on me anymore. So right, what could happen if you went through that journey to kind of get to that spot?
That is so, so, so good. And I have never even thought about that whole cycle like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cause I mean, I work with a lot of women who, once you get to know women and you start like, this is a struggle that a lot of people have. Anybody trying to transform their body, you know, or feel better or
Yeah.
whatever. Okay. So I would love for you to give us some tips about like, okay, so I am somebody who is just getting started on this journey, who is open to this idea of, okay, I realize that I have this problem. I realize that food is a bigger control in my life than I want it to be. When they are
Mm-hmm.
going to like sit down and have a meal, could you give us like a couple things that you can do to allow yourself to like get out of the anxiety, get out of the stressful state around food? Um, could you take us there?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things that I work with people on is self-compassion. So whenever we are constantly at war with our body, it's very difficult, almost impossible to find peace with food. So I definitely don't expect anyone to love their body, right? To be like, I'm definitely not expecting anyone to be like, oh my gosh, I turned a page, I love my body now. If we have been kind of like right? Saying things to ourselves for however many years. Can I respect my body? Right? I don't expect you to love your body. Can I respect my body? And so self-compassion is a big piece of that. And I work with people on intuitive eating. Sometimes I get the question, Haley, how do I lose weight with intuitive eating? And or how do I intentionally lose weight with intuitive eating? And this is actually a weight neutral approach. And what that means is that we're not against weight loss. I want to help people understand that in using intentional weight loss as a driving force for what they're doing, I always ask people the question of like, has that served you and what it's promised you? Has that given you what it's promised you after all of those years? And what I mean by that, has it given you that for longer than a 2-year period? Because research hasn't shown it to last longer than that. So what it's actually done is created this unhealthy relationship with our body. And so we want to work on self-compassion and knowing that whatever body you currently reside in, you deserve to have food. You deserve to show your body respect because every behavior that you work on in relationship to intuitive eating can be uncoupled from weight loss. So you working on your mental health, you working on your emotional health, you moving your body, you allowing yourself to have food, all of those things can be uncoupled from weight loss. And it's so peaceful to be in that place. Right now, I'm going to help you wherever your body changes with you listening to your body. That's what I want to help people kind of navigate through. So that first thing is, do you have self-compassion with yourself? How do you talk to
That's so
yourself?
good, Haley.
Do you allow yourself to have those things? Do you allow yourself to enjoy those things? And part of that too is when you think about emotional unpleasantness, there's a difference between physical pleasant. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here.
No,
There's a difference
this is
between
so good.
there's a difference between physical unpleasantness and emotional unpleasantness. And when we think about self-compassion with ourselves, physical unpleasantness is physical signals that your body is sending you. So am I bloated because I overate? Do I feel like I need to go lie down because of that? Physical things in the sense of, are my knees hurting? Am I having trouble breathing? Am I not as mobile as I want to be? Those are physical unpleasantness things. Emotional unpleasantness is the things that I kind of say in my head to myself. You're so lazy. You don't deserve food. Why did you do that? I can't believe that you ate that. Those emotional unpleasantness things are what kind of drive that wedge to keep us sucked into diet mentality. And we want to bring into that what I call the nurturer. It's a voice of neutral observation. So whenever you have a thought of emotional unpleasantness, or rather physical unpleasantness, where let's say you ate past fullness, you sat down for a meal, you ate past fullness, instead of what's wrong with you, why can't you have willpower to do this, those things, you how does that feel? Congrats, you're a human. Everyone has ate past fullness in their life. You are not a bad person. Why do you think that happened? Did you not eat very much today? Did your lunch not last you very long? Did you have more activity than normal? Were you distracted when you were eating? Right? So whenever we remove all that emotional unpleasantness, we can actually leave room for curiosity and questions rather than lifting ourselves up to help us progress with trusting our body rather than pushing ourselves down. So in a roundabout way, self-compassion is number one.
Wow.
Now, the other thing that I love to dive into people with is satisfaction. So, satisfaction is the core to being able to respect your fullness. So, if you sit down with a meal that you're only eating because you think it's what you should eat, or you've been told that it's what you should eat, and you think that this is the only quote unquote healthy thing there is, but you hate everything about that meal, it's boring, it lacks color, it's not going to give you satisfaction. If you don't have satisfaction with food, you might get full, but you're going to be searching for something afterwards because satisfaction and fullness have to be present together. And so I always work with people on, what do you want? What sounds good to you? And if you are unsure of what that answer is, spend some time exploring, what tastes do you like? What textures do you like? What appearance of foods do you like? What smells do you like? Right? What sounds good to you? And allow yourself to have that thing, right? Do I want something crunchy? Do I want something soft or sweet or savory? And so satisfaction is a really big part to you being able to respect your fullness. And it's pretty cool being able to enjoy your food because it was satisfying to you. I think also the misconception with that is if it's satisfying to me, then I'll overeat it. And
Yeah.
what actually happens when you allow yourself to have something that you enjoy is you're able to respect your fullness because, again, I know that I have unconditional permission to have it whenever I want. So all those things kind of like intertwine
Wow,
together.
that is so, so good. And it's just cool. Like, I've just loved watching the content that you've been sharing. And so you guys should go follow Haley. Whenever we get off of here, drop your Instagram handle in the
Okay.
comments below so people can go find
Okay.
that. But this really is just something that is going to become a lot bigger, because I mean, our parents were like a part of,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm speaking for, a lot of people that I know. Our parents were a part of diet culture. It's what we watched, it's what we know. And I like are the kind of the first generation that's coming in and like questioning things and like asking
Yeah.
ourselves more questions and becoming more mindful. So, well, in closing, I mean, holy smokes, that was like so great. I'm gonna have to go back and watch this, but is there anything else that you would like to share with somebody who struggles with this stuff, like an encouraging word?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're someone who decides to kind of dive into the intuitive eating journey, I think it's important to know that there is no failure. In intuitive eating, we're used to, with diet culture, there being a pass or a fail. And there are no rules with intuitive eating, absolutely none. And so there is no failure. And so there's a diagram that I really love that intuitive eating has, and it's called spiral of healing. And it starts at the bottom, and it it starts out with very big spirals. And so what happens with that is, as you're going to start progressing through your intuitive eating journey, you're going to start to progress, but diet culture may pull you back because it's loud and it's never going away. And so when it pulls you back, what's cool about that spiral is that it goes up. And so as you might be circling around diet culture and kind of like thoughts are still coming through and you're trying to push them down, you're trying to progress, you didn't lose that progress that you just had. You're still going up, and as you circle it back around, you're higher. And when it circles back around, those spirals get smaller and smaller. So whenever you circle back around to the top, it's not going to pull you back as far. You're just going to
Wow,
continue.
I love
So
that.
I love the meaning behind it. And right, like, it's not a staircase. You're not going down. It's spiraling you upwards. So patience, give yourself self-compassion. There are no rules. There are no failures. It's bringing in that curiosity. Can I start to notice the things that are happening as I'm progressing? Can I start to be curious about why, my relationship with food, why might certain things be happening that are making me feel unpleasant, rather than kind of having that like judgment upon myself. So spiral of healing would be that big thing that I would remember, that everyone's journey is going to be different. Someone may feel like they're kind of like they have healed in like 3 months, and someone it may be years, right? And it's kind of, where are you starting on your journey, and kind of being able to go from there. So yeah, anyone can always reach out to me on Instagram, because I love the questions. It helps me learn. It helps me share information with other people. So please don't be afraid to reach out to me, because I could probably talk for like 5 hours with you about all of this, if I'm being
Oh,
honest.
I could sit here and ask you questions for 5 hours. So. Well, this was so amazing. Yeah, you guys will have to go check her out on Instagram. And Haley, thank you so much. This was so valuable, and hopefully there's a lot of people that catch the replay.
Yeah,
And
I
can learn.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
appreciate it
well, we'll
so
see you
much.
guys. Thanks, Haley.
Bye.